I'm Scott Adams. I've been in the industry for quite a long time. I'm either credited as being one of the very first or one earliest or the first founder of computer games for gaming for computers. When I first got into computers, it was in 1978, and some of you may not have even been born then, I don't know. Okay, so we're going to take a look down memory lane, and I'm going to talk about what I did then and how God has changed my life and what I'm doing moving forward and how it's going to be more God and less me. The picture you see up on the front gives you a good example of what I'm talking about. The one on the left was a typical ad that I used during the time that I was doing the adventure games. And as you can see, it was totally secular. I was not interested in God. I was not a Christian at that time. My latest work is called The Inheritance, and it is totally God-centered. And all my work in the future is going to be based along the same lines. God's story, that was then. I grew up, I was Jewish. I was raised Jewish. My grandfather was an Orthodox rabbi, though my mother was not really practicing Jewish, except when Grandpa came down. Growing up, I was not exposed to Christianity other than basically the feeling that you've got to stay away from Christians. They're dangerous. They sort of like eat their own children. They've got this weird faith. I did go to Hebrew school. I went I was raised Jewish. When I say not practicing Jewish, there's a cultural Judaism. You don't have a connection with God, but you have traditions and you have things that you do because you're Jewish. I was bar mitzvahed when I was 13, for example. I went to confirmation class. What I was confirming, I haven't a clue at this point, but I went to confirmation class, and that's what I was doing. So that was my raising at the time. Once I grew up, went away to college, and moved out, I wasn't even a cultural Jew anymore. I just didn't care. I was doing the typical American, whatever. I was, right, and my wife here is my prompter. I brought my teleprompter. She's sitting right here. So please excuse while I read from my teleprompter every once in a while. Like she said, I was an atheist. I was not a practicing Jew. I was not agnostic. I was atheist. Teenagehood and the gift. I firmly believe that God gives every single one of us gifts. Some of us have one, some have many. We all have different gifts. We all do different things with them. I discovered my gift when I was a teenager. This was in the late 60s in Miami, Florida. As an experiment for the state of Florida, they decided to put a computer terminal into a high school's math resource center and see what would happen. They happened to pick the high school I went to. I was in 12th grade at the time. I was supposed to have skipped 12th grade. I had already been accepted for early admission to pre-med in University of Miami. My mom was she was a Jewish mother in that she was very forceful about what she wanted her kids to do. And you're going to go to college, you're going to get an education, and you're going to be a doctor. And he's going to be an engineer. And this was all laid out. All right, so I had early admission to University of Miami. I was going to be a doctor, and I went to her and said, I really don't feel ready. I don't want to go to college. I want to do my senior year. No, you don't know what you're talking about, Scott. No, I really don't want to go. So this was one of the few arguments that I won, and I got to stay in high school, yes, because everything fell from there. I discovered this Selectric typewriter sitting on a desk and a dial-up 110 modem that you heard about earlier this morning. They really did exist. And it was not a standard typewriter. The reason they had a Selectric typewriter is the ball was taken off and an APL 360 ball was put on it. Anybody know what APL is? Wow, okay. It stands for, get ready for this, a programming language. Seriously. It is a math language. It is designed to do calculus, matrix arithmetic, everything as a computer language. It is if you think computer languages are Greek today to people, you'd have to see this one. The entire character set is Greek characters. And each character has a different operator that's doing in math. It's designed to be a math language. Ran on a 360 IBM, which is why it was called APL 360. The IBM was down at the University of Miami. We had the terminal. Okay, that's it. All they did, they put it there in the phone. Went in, what's this? Oh, it's the new computer. How do I use it? Well, we don't know. There's a phone number. You dial it up and you'll be connected. Okay. Hooked it up, started typing, and didn't have a clue what was going on. There was some English that came up. It says, welcome to Workspace North. Okay. I ended up getting a manual for it that I paid for myself because I had a friend who went to University of Miami. I said, please, can you get a manual? And they did. They bought me an APL 360 manual. I devoured it, and I decided I wanted to try writing a program, the typical Hello World type program. So I did a few steps. I was able to get it to do something. And I decided I'm going to do a major project. And the thing I wanted to write most was a... Yes! I was going to write a tic-tac-toe program where not only could you play against the computer, but the computer would play against you and never lose. Because I knew it was possible. And I did. It took me probably all semester. I honestly don't remember how long. I had to work on it at home. I'd be writing it on paper. I'd go in and then transfer it to the computer. It got to the point where I went to the school and I got permission to go there at 6 a.m. in the morning, and the custodians would let me in the school once they arrived. I'd use the computer all morning, do my classes, and then after school, I had permission to stay as late as I want, and they locked me in the school. And then I usually came home around 9 o'clock, got permission from my parents. I was kind of hungry when I got home, but it was fun. And I got my program working. And I actually saved the code from it, and I just recently sent that off to the Strong Museum in Rochester, New York, as part of my collection of memorabilia over the years. So anyway, basically, I discovered I had a gift. I didn't know it was from God. I just enjoyed it. I went off to college. Now I knew what I wanted to do, so I went into computer science and went to Florida. It was called Florida Institute of Technology, now known as Florida Tech, in Melbourne, Florida. Got my degree there. Long story what happened down there. Giving just some tidbits. While I was down there, I ended up working for the computer science department as a student tech. I came in, I was putting mailing labels on the alumni newsletter. By the time I left the college, I was getting free college remission for all my classes, and I was in charge of the school's payroll and accounting programs. It's a good thing they gave me the the tuition remission, because with my power over the accounting system, I may have gotten it myself. But anyway, when I'm down there, 3 years in, I have a year to go, a sign goes up on the board saying they wanted a math major to be a space object identification downrange on Ascension Island in the Atlantic. And I checked into it, found out they would accept somebody without a degree. So I actually did not finish my degree. I went to work downrange for RCA on the Eastern Air Force Test Range. I had a great deal of fun. I found they had a computer there, and I ended up changing their computer to do stuff for them, made the company very happy what I did, came back up, which leads me to the next gaming story, because after I got out of there, I went to Antigua Island in the Caribbean and spent 9 months there. Well, this is the time you heard the Star Trek game that was floating around in the IT departments. You could play Star Trek on the computer. Somebody invented it. I didn't write it. It was written in Fortran. I got a copy of it, and I put it on the mainframe there, and I'm playing it on the teletype, and I thought, wow, this is cool, except it's all words. It would draw a screen of where the ship is. Clank, 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 and this was the teletype. He said it was like this electric typewriter this morning, Phil. To me, it was more like a Roman hammer and chisel typing out each letter. So I got the game going, working, and I thought, I got this radar screen over there. There's no one around. It's after hours. I literally turned this multi-million-dollar radar station into a video game. I had Star Trek playing on the radar screens where they were doing all the tracking. So This just gives you an idea of how much I love gaming. So I had a gift, and that's what God gave to me. Okay, adulthood and squandering the inheritance. Is it up yet? Okay. These are just a few pictures of the me in Adventure International. I started a company in 1978 called Adventure International, and it got to the point I was very well known. For example, that instant software picture of me over there, I was actually asked to go ahead and see if I would recommend other companies' programs, because I was a name, so they felt that my name would help sell their stuff, which only made my image bigger and made my head bigger, which is why I'm wearing a hat, trying to keep it down again. Literally, I was amazed with myself. I was all into myself. I had this company. We ran from 78 to 85. Phil talked about the crash of 85. That took us under. During that time, though, up until that crash, because we were totally self-funded and there was no investors or anything, and we did not have money to weather what was happening. You'll see Marvel characters up there. Marvel actually came to me and said, hey, we've been licensing our characters for toys and everything. We want to get into computer games. We asked around, and everybody said, you're the person we should license to. And they did. Marvel licensed their entire catalog to me. I wrote games with the Marvel characters. This is amazing. Hulk, Spider-Man, Fantastic Four. So it was a blast. To me, it just felt like it was natural. It was coming. The bigger my head got, the worse business got. I don't know if you can appreciate that. And I'm going to tell a story a little later on that I learned a big lesson from. So this was my company growing. We were a multi-million-dollar company. Eventually, we went bankrupt. It's gone. Adventure International is gone, and the blame is mine. I drove it into the ground without realizing it. So, moving forward, because I know I was down in the dumps, multi-millionaire, bankrupt. My life came crashing down. That's the time God can best talk to us. Reach out and tap you on the shoulder. He reached out and tapped me on the shoulder. Actually, he slapped me upside the head. It was amazing. I got invited. No, my wife and I were getting a divorce. My girls were going with their nanny to a Christian camp for the weekend. I had nothing to do. And I remember I loved horseback riding when I was a kid because I had a friend with horses. And so I asked, are there horses there? Oh, yeah, I think there's horses there. You think I could tag along? Huh? Yeah, I guess. It's a Christian camp, you know. Yeah, I know. I don't have to go to any services or anything, right? No, you don't have to. Okay. So I tagged along. And that night, they were having worship. Everybody's going off to the chapel and everything. I'm all alone. It's like, is it okay if I go in there? Yeah, sure, you can come in. Wow! That night the speaker was a Jewish lady who had converted. Talk to me, brother. A Jewish lady and her story, her testimony, and it's like, wow, I'd never heard this before. It shocked me. So it was like, could this Christianity thing really be true? Well, my way of finding things out is I always like to research it for myself. Now, this was before the internet, so I couldn't look up and type, is Christianity true? There's no web page for that. So I figured, okay, what's the next best thing I'm going to do? I'm going to get a Bible. Well, I had a Bible, one Jewish, grew up, got a confirmation Bible, and I took it and I read, and I thought, I think there's something missing. I remember when I was taking piano lessons, my teacher had another book called the New Testament. I can't seem to find that in here. So I had an earnest prayer. I prayed. I figured, God, if you're really there, you're supposed to hear prayers. So this is the deal, God. I'm going to give you a chance to prove yourself to me. Am I to become a Christian? prove it. I'm asking you. I'll read about you, and you got to prove it to me, otherwise I'm just going to move on. Because if you're really there, you can do something that I'll know. So I need a new Bible. I went into a Christian bookstore, and I came in. They said, "Can I help you?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "Do you sell Bibles?" He started laughing. He said, "Yeah." I said, "Okay, I'd like to buy one." And then he said, "Which one do you want?" There's more than one. He took me over to the wall with the Bibles. What flavor? All sorts of Bibles. And I looked at them. I thought, I want something small and that's not daunting. So I pointed to one. I said, "Is that a complete Bible?" It's about this big, paperback. It turned out it was an NIV. He said, "Yeah," and it fit in my back pocket. I always had a paperback book in my back pocket. It was always science fiction because I was always reading. So I put the Bible in there, went home, and decided, okay, start reading. I opened, okay, this is the Bible. And I thought, okay, the salesman told something neat, that this is a red letter edition Bible, which meant anything in red, Jesus wrote. I want to see what this Jesus fellow had to write. So I'll flip through. Okay, there's red, and I start reading, and I go, whoa. The very first thing I read from Jesus was something I already knew, which was the Lord's Prayer. Me, a little Jewish boy, where did I ever learn the Lord's Prayer? But I knew it by heart, and there it was, and I'm reading the Lord's Prayer, and whoa. Okay, yeah. And it was like, yeah, I know I promised you prove it to me, I'd believe in you, but that's too much of a coincidence. I'm sorry. I put it away. Next night I said, okay, we're going to do this again. God, you got to be careful when you talk to him. Because when he answers, God, okay, I'm going to try you again, and we're not playing this game anymore. I'm going to read something else Jesus said, and if you can talk to me to it, then I'll accept Jesus. So I opened there's where I read before, very carefully, holding it away. I open, okay, another red letter edition. Start reading, and guess? You got it. You got it. Lord's Prayer again. I said, oh, okay, I'm either in big trouble. So I went and asked somebody who was familiar with the Bible next day. And I said, Lord's Prayer is in the New Testament, right? And they said, yeah. And it's sort of like all over the New Testament, isn't it? It must be in there about 50, 60 times. No, it's only in there 2 places. That's when I accepted Jesus into my heart. He has talked to me a lot since then. Don't applaud me. It's him. We have to be willing to listen. We have to be willing to ask. Amen. He talks to me in signs, and it's usually in doubles. And they're signs that my teleprompter says I need to speak up. They're signs that speak to my heart and what I understand. And that's what I found about God. If somebody truly seeks him, he'll talk to them their way. Not my way, their way. Okay, so I came to Christ. During this time, something weird happened out there. I don't know. For you, those of you that grew up later, to you it's not so weird. For us older people, I am so old, I actually have a Wikipedia page. That's when you know you're ancient. Okay. The internet got invented. And suddenly I'm getting mail. Fan mail of people who had played my games. A lot of them were younger kids, 8 to 12, 8 to 16, and they discovered me on the internet and said, wow, your games meant a lot to me. And each and every one of them had a story, and they were amazing stories. My games were never really violent or harmful. A lot of families liked having their kids play them because they helped them learn and develop, and they had fun. I remember one letter that really, really touched me. I got a letter saying, have to tell you this, that our mom was on her deathbed, literally, and what she asked was for the family to pull out the old computer and sit around and playing the text adventure games together because it had drawn the family together so much. And that was like, wow. That really, really struck me. I also got lots and lots of letters from people that said, you know, the career I went into was because of your games. I found I enjoyed science, I enjoyed programming, I enjoyed thinking about things. So I'm getting all this fan mail, which is interesting, but I'm working now as a software engineer in Wisconsin for a company at the time known as Avista, or actually it was called Insight at the time. The fellow who is running it used to be the director at Commodore Computer. People remember Commodore Computer. Well, they licensed my games, and so I got to know them very well. And so the guy who was actually the one that I would always deal with, that ran the software department, called me one day and said, and this was after I had lost my job. My company had folded. I worked for a while as a consultant for another job, and then I couldn't get work anywhere. Literally, I sent out 50 resumes, and I kept getting back overqualified, overqualified, overqualified. I couldn't get a job. It's crazy. We sat down, we kneeled down. After 6 weeks of trying it, Roxanne, my wife, said, why don't we try this a different way? Why don't we have a prayer? Okay, why didn't I think of that? Okay, literally, we had our prayer. And after the prayer, the phone rang. I pick up the phone, it's John Matthias, who used to work at Commodore. He now has started his own company up in the United States, and he says, Scott, are you available? I've been trying to get a hold of you for months now, and I finally got this number. Would you like to come work for me? I said, yeah. Where? He said, Wisconsin. I said, great. Where's Wisconsin? This was from Florida. Another answer to prayer. So anyway, I've been with that company that he founded now for 28 years. Yeah, and I'll probably be retiring it from it. It got sold. At one point, the employees, we bought out the original owner. I had a small share in it, then it got sold again. Now it's part of a very large multinational company called Esterline. And I'm very happy there, and they take very good care of their employees, and I really enjoy it. Okay, so now I felt I had nothing further to give to gaming. I love playing games, but I felt, my place in the world is gone. It's the past. In 2001, I think it was 2001, I started work on The Inheritance. It was 2001 because it was 10 years later that I finally finished it. Talk about a long-term project. I'd work on a little bit, I'd stop, work on a little bit. We have 5 kids, 11 grandkids now, 10? 10. We will have 11, I just know it. Okay, so we got 10 grandkids now. So I've got lots of kids, as you can imagine, taking care of a family. This was part-time, and there were years went by, literally. And then I got fan mail saying, what are you working on? We want another game. And so I'd work on it for a while. I'd peter off. I get another fan mail. I literally have thousands of fan mail. I mean, I have folders full of this. But not everybody was saying, when are you going to work on another game? There was one lady, Sandy Harris, whose son died, who was very, very persistent. She was one of the reasons I proceeded forward. Anyway, that Toby Mac song, to me, strikes a chord. Don't give up. Whenever it's darkest, the dawn's coming. Okay. Isaac Asimov. Who knows Isaac Asimov? Okay, people still know of him. During my generation, he was one of the prime 3 science fiction writers in the world. Isaac Asimov, Robert Heinlein, and Arthur C. Yes, Arthur C. Clarke. Those are the 3 big. Who? Yeah. Actually, Dick died he died much earlier on. Philip K. Dick, if you've seen any Harrison Bergeron, Minority Report, Total Recall, that was the one I was just trying to, all those were short stories that he wrote long before he died. It's amazing. Almost all his works have been turned into major motion pictures long after he died. Anyway, Philip K. Dick was already dead when these 3 were still alive. So he wasn't considered the big 3. So Isaac Asimov was a biggie, a really biggie. Because of my Marvel connection, I was up in Manhattan one year at Marvel, and I was wrapping up what I was doing that day, and I'm leaving, and the secretary says, oh, you're friends with Harlan Ellison, right? I said, well, not exactly. Anyone know Harlan Ellison? He was another big name science fiction author in Hollywood, really big name for the time. And she said, well, they're having a birthday party for him tonight. Would you like to go? Sure, why not? Yeah, of course they would. So she gives me an apartment number in Manhattan. I go up there, knock on the door, I come in. There's Isaac Asimov, Sulu. George Takei was there. The name list goes on. I can't think of it. Anyway, so I got to meet Isaac, and I talked with him briefly. Got to meet his wife, got to meet everybody else, which was really cool. Meeting these people in the flesh, and they're just humans like us, but it was fun meeting them. I never even got to say hello to Harlan Ellison. Anybody ever see Brazil, the movie? Do you remember the scene where the guy's walking through and there's a swarm of people following him everywhere he goes, the minions, as he goes back and forth and back and forth? Well, that was like Harlan. He walked into a room and he was running. If we run on 110 volts, he was running on 500 volts. He was just nonstop power, and everybody was around him, and I just didn't get into that. So I talked with Isaac and so forth. Okay, the rest of the story. The next day, I was down in Manhattan, and there was a small comic book convention going on and computer gaming. And because my stuff was there, I went into it, see what was going on. And I was at one of the booths, and I'm standing there, and I look across the hall about the distance from probably here down to that door over there. Big double doors to this where it would walk in, you'd walk down in. And I saw Isaac Asimov walk in. He just walked in. And everybody's passing him. He's just standing there. And then he just stood there like this. And just waited. This is weird. He's waiting. And then suddenly somebody runs up. You're Isaac Asimov! Oh, can I touch you? This, and the swarms descended on him. He was just eating up the power of his notoriety. I had done the same thing. We were at Midwest Gaming Classic in Milwaukee, and I gave a talk there. And afterwards, people came up and they were talking with me, and one of them asked my wife a really weird question. Remember that? Go ahead, share it.
I'm complete opposite of my husband, non-tech, outdoorsy kind of person, and I really didn't understand his history and what was involved until I went to this thing, and this lady came up to me, starry-eyed, and said, "What's it like to live with Scott Adams?" How do you answer a question like that?
She should have said, I'm the one who washes his dirty underwear.
Interesting. I didn't know what else to say. So I said, yeah, interesting living with him. But they're his head, and that's why God put us together, is for me to keep him human. And well, really like that's why we're a hat. So God always puts people together for a reason.
Okay. This is me. I'm enjoying a lot more stuff outside the cave. It's interesting to get up here. This is actually a 7,000-mile trek for me. It started in Wisconsin. We went down to Fort Myers, then up to Carlsbad, then up here to Portland. We're going over to Yellowstone. We're going to the Grand Tetons. We're going to Jackson, down through Missouri. We're having quite an adventure, if I may say so myself. The kids asked Roxanne and said, "Mom, how did you get Dad out of the Shire?" We have a travel trailer that we're towing along behind it, and I just call it the mini Shire, so I haven't left. My life's a lot different now. I'm treasurer at the local church. I'm very involved with my faith. My faith has had ups and downs, too. There was a section where I went into denial over things that had happened, but I came back stronger. God is really there, and God is good. What to do with the gift, the inheritance. This is a game that I started 2001, didn't finish till 2000. 2011 and released it. It's a text adventure game again, interactive fiction. Some folks have said interactive fiction is like a choose your own ending storybook, though in effect, interactive fiction is more a tale with puzzles, where the author has put puzzles in your path that you need to solve to get to the end. It takes a lot of thinking, a lot of logical reasoning to work through things. I like to try to put humor in my games too, and sometimes it's unintentional. There was in Adventureland, there's a bear that's on a ledge, and my way around that puzzle was you're supposed to yell at the bear to scare it so it would fall off the ledge. Back in the days of my early games, the parser was very, very poor. We had 16K of total memory that we could work with. The whole game had to fit in it. That means vocabulary was small, excuse me. And so to help with that, I would only use 3 letters of a word. So instead of yell, it'd be Y-E-L. And I would have synonyms for some of the words. So yell, you could use scream, etc. And then I got a fan letter. And I actually, back then, I had my own company. I had 35 employees. We're multi-million-dollar company. So I wasn't even reading my fan mail. It was coming in during the game time, being read by the front staff, and they would send things forward they thought I should read. So I hear them cracking up and laughing and laughing and cracking up. I say, what's going on in here? You got to share it with me. I say, okay. Well, we're playing Adventureland, and we got to the bear, and we've tried everything we could do, and nothing would work, until we finally said, screw bear. And it replied, bear is so startled he falls off the ledge. The SCR was, of course, for scream. Okay. The inheritance was designed to be, it has a full language parser and a 5-level help system. I spent 10 years writing it and had a lot of fun doing it, and that's where it's at now. Here's something interesting. This is a fan letter I got just this week, and I thought it was kind of apropos for this session, so I highlighted some of the key points. This is from a fellow named Brian, who turns out he had never played adventure games or classic games, but he was always interested in classic gaming. His company got a TRS-80 Model 3 in pristine condition. They got a hold of Ira Goldklang's website. I don't know if you know that, but he's an archiver of TRS-80 stuff from the past. And he got sent a bunch of discs, including my old games, which he said, wow, I've never played them, and he's having a lot of fun playing it. And then he went to my website and he learned about the inheritance, and he says, wow, that's really awesome. Using video games to teach children, teens, and adults the Bible is a great method, great way to teach about Jesus. And that's the intent. That's what I was doing with the inheritance. And he's 21. 21 years old. 22. Take it back. Why do I even argue with her? She's I've got to learn that. She's right. Okay, that's the intent of the inheritance. I want to reach out. I want to build the kingdom. Amen. To me, that's the key. It's not about making money. It's not about me, which unfortunately has been part of the problem. Okay, now technical talk. This is how'd I do this? What's my game running under? What's the secret behind it? Not really a big secret. When I originally wrote my the first one, the Adventureland and Pirates Adventure, I was using BASIC. And that is the code that Phil typed in. And little did I know that when Byte magazine did this, and this was in 78, 79, December issue, I can't remember which one, they put the whole game in there, including the database, and there were some typos. So for him to get the game running is kudos to his programming skills, because he actually had to debug mistakes that Byte magazine put into that article. What my game was originally written in, Adventureland, like I said, I was inspired by Colossal Caves. That was an amazing game. It was running around on IT. I was working at Stromberg Carlson, went into work one day, and somebody told me about it. I came in every day for a week in the morning for a couple hours and played the game. If you've not played Colossal Caves, you should at least play a little bit of it. It is what all adventure games came from. Adventureland is not based on it. It has none of the puzzles, nothing's the same. It's just the concept of being able to do it. At that time, I had my first appliance computer, a TRS-80 Model 1. I call it an appliance computer because I didn't have to build it. My previous home computers were all home built. And there's lots of stories there, don't have time to go into it. So anyway, I decided I wanted to do a game like that. I told friends at work, I'm going to do a game like that, and they laughed at me. Your little 16K toy is going to do this? This is running on a mainframe. You don't have anywhere the processing power or anything. Well, Microsoft Basic had something unique in it that you didn't have in Fortran or assembly language, and that's something called strings, the ability to manipulate English characters. And I thought, hey, I've been wanting to play with strings. This game obviously is using the concept of strings. I never got to see how Colossal Caves was written. I never saw the source code. The IT department wouldn't show it to me even if I had asked them. So what I did was I approached the problem with how am I going to get this game to fit? I invented my own language. And I then wrote my game in my language. It's basically a database interpreter language, and I wrote a database that goes with it. And then I wrote another program that took my commands and made the database. And then I developed the game as I went along. So that was every game that I wrote in my series, and there were 14 original games. Each one I would try to do something different in the game, just for the fun of it, because I wanted to stretch it. I'd stretch the interpreter, the engine, and everything. So I had a lot of fun going there. Later, when I'm doing the inheritance, I built on that original concept of that engine, but I really beefed it up. I made a natural language engine so that I could handle everything. So for me, I'm most comfortable working in my own environment. I know a lot of things have come since in form, TADS, etc., for writing interactive fiction. I write all my stuff in my own engine. And later, shortly, we'll start the questions and answer section. So if people have questions, you're welcome to ask that or anything else. All right. Okay, the inheritance. The inheritance sales did not do well. In the early days when I was selling stuff, I just sold it. It sold well because there wasn't a lot of stuff out there. When you're first in a marketplace, you make a name, and because you've made a name, you then sell more. So it was very easy. Coming back now, I did sell to fans of previous games, but I wasn't hitting the new market. I probably need more testing in it because I set myself an artificial date. After 10 years, I got tired of working on this. So okay, I took a year off to really finish it. I took all my vacation time from work, but I probably didn't test it. I probably should have given it at least another 6 months, I think, of beta testing to put even more stuff into it. And last, by no means least, it needs rebranding. It still says Scott Adams Grand Adventures on the package. So I need to fix that. I'm going to see if I can't get the Inheritance Ministries or something like that. I got to turn this over to God. I got to get myself out of the picture and God into the picture. So right now, that's what I'm currently working on, is redoing the Inheritance Part 1, the Inheritance Original, do a Release 2. I'm selling off the old inventory once it's gone. I'm not going to make any more until it's time for the next go-around. The Inheritance, if you ever get to the end, and it's quite a long ways in there, does have hooks for future games. And I want to do things like travel in time in the world, connect with God and His Word, family fun, educational, etc. Adventure games, I just met with a fellow in Florida who was a fan of my games since day one. And he says because of my games when he was a kid, he got his doctorate in interactive fiction. Whoa, there's a doctorate you can get now? This is amazing. Louder. My voice is going, sorry. So he is working on his own interactive fiction game based on Colonial Williamsburg to teach history. And he's getting a grant to do it. And so he asked if I could be an advisor on his grant because he has to show that he's run it by other people that have industry experience.
Use water?
Yeah, I've got some here. 1 minute. Excuse me. Thank you very much. So I'm hoping there'll be some synergy that comes out of this where I can help him and maybe connect him with other people that can also help him. Because I think interactive fiction is a tremendous way to teach things. People remember things that they've played in a game a lot more than they do reading a book. So that's moving forward. Closing God's story, the true inheritance. This is from the Old Testament. By faith, and I ran across this and I read it and I said, this has got to be the thing to talk about. It just called to me. By faith, Abraham, when called to go to a place he would later receive as his inheritance, obeyed and went even though he did not know where he was going. By faith, made his home in the promised land like a stranger in a foreign country. He lived in tents, as did Isaac and Jacob, who were heirs with him of the same promise. He's looking forward to the city with foundations, whose architect and builder is God. From this one man, as good as dead, came descendants as numerous as the stars in the sky, countless as sands on the seashore. I don't consider myself an Abraham, by the way. God gives each and every one of us a gift. We all have a tremendous gift. And if we're not using our gift to God's glory, we're wasting it. And if we are using our gifts to God's glory, we can't take credit for it. We can't. He's the giver. So, questions and answers. If you have the answers, I'll give you the questions.
I'm a little interested in your language. What would you kind of compare it to as far as modern languages and like?
Doesn't fit anything. It came, and I'd be happy to actually show it to you. And there's the old classic version of the two-word games is already out there. It's called Scot-Free. I did not write it. I did not release it. The story behind that is I had a company I had licensing companies around the world, from Japan to England when I had my company. In England, it was they called themselves Adventure International UK. Basically, they licensed my games for me and redid it on their local machines. The programmer who I went over there to train so he could take my engine and port it, then took the engine and started writing his own games in it. And then along the lines, it got out to other people, and it finally got out into public domain land, and they called it Scot-Free. So if you want to see how the old engine works, it's there. If you're really interested in the new engine, I'm happy to share that too. I consider it's God's tool, so I don't mind sharing it with anybody that wants to use it. Differently? Yeah, no, what lessons learned? Yes. Sure, yeah, if you're doing your own software company now, one thing to be aware of is Net 30. Net 30, anybody know what Net 30 is? Yeah, Net 30 is when you get somebody who's going to, you're selling a game as a wholesaler, you sell it to a retailer, and Net 30 is, okay, they promised to pay you in 30 days. You're giving them credit. Well, you get extended, and you get a lot of companies out there selling your games. They're all on Net 30, and suddenly this crash comes along, and they can't pay you, and you can't pay backwards, because you've already produced the game. You've had to do the inventory and everything. So loaning money is always hazardous. Never loan money to a friend. Seriously, if they're a good enough friend, give them the money. If you're loaning it to them, don't expect it back, because it'll kill your friendship. Anything else?
Well, the other thing too that caused a lot of problems was finances was IRS, having to deal with them and paying taxes and the whole thing. And we've had friends that have just had a lot of problems. I wasn't in the picture at the time during this, but
well, here's a clue.
Are very important.
Yeah, have a good accountant.
Yes.
We had an accountant. We used an outside accounting firm, so we thought we were really safe. And they said, well, here's something you can do to save taxes at the end of the year. I said, isn't that like a tax shelter? He says, yeah. I said, oh, cool. I always wanted to be rich enough to have a tax shelter. That sounds neat. IRS came in and said, that's not a tax shelter, that's fraud. Whoa, big bill. Here's another thing, going bankrupt, your company's going down. Going up, it's easy. When the company's going down, you got to make tough decisions. What do I pay this week? Do I pay payroll? Do I pay vendor A? Do I pay vendor B? Do I pay my taxes? Clue, always pay the taxes first. Why? Because when you go into bankruptcy, you can't declare the taxes. You have to pay them one way or the other. Always pay the taxes first. I didn't know that, and I didn't. I paid the taxes last or not at all. Went into bankruptcy, suddenly had a big personal debt for the back taxes for payroll that I didn't pay. I don't know. I do know that he's talking about piracy. Is piracy something to be concerned about? I know piracy hurt me a lot when I was selling my games because people would buy a cassette tape, make a copy of it, and give it to friends. It's kind of strange, but I actually, in many cases, made more money on the hint sheets that I sold than I did on the original game. Because there was no way to get hints for the game. You couldn't look it up on the internet. So we sold hint sheets for $1 plus shipping and handling, or a hint book for $14.95. Man, did I sell hint books. I'm going, how did I sell this many hint books? We haven't sold this many games. And there's less piracy in Christian games, and I think if you appeal to the Christian honesty of your buyer, it will make a difference. In the game itself, if there's some way to say, you know, if you got this game and you didn't pay the author, you're stealing from me. Do you really want to be doing that? Here's a toll-free number, here's a website, here's something to make it right. Just talk to them. If they're interested in Christian games, then hopefully they're also a Christian. Actually, hopefully they're not a Christian. Hopefully they're someone that wants to be a Christian. Yes?
As a developer, I'm curious, are you a player as well? And what kind of games
Yep,
are you playing these days?
Yeah, I am a player. I'm getting a lot less play time than I used to have. I've always enjoyed MMORPGs, or just MMOs, from the original EverQuest in the very beginning to Guild Wars 2 right now. If I do get some play time, I'll play some in Guild Wars 2. Also Lord of the Rings. When the final Hobbit movie came out, what was it, 2 years ago now? It got me interested again, so I've almost got a 50 level character, and they're up to like level 100. So my game time isn't much, but I enjoy that.
It used to be a lot more.
Yep. Teleprompter never lies. I realize now that whenever I'm getting stuck, if I turn to him, I'm going to get the inspiration I needed, and I do that a lot. I can't tell you the number of times. It's not just my creative game writing, it's also in my work. As a programmer, you get stuck with a lot of problems that come up that are really tough and knotty, and invariably when I finally fail to solve it on my own, I will have a prayer at work or wherever I am, and usually within the hour I get an answer. And he helps me through it, and I give him the credit. And he says it's okay. I can't know everything. He does, so he's willing to share. The ultimate coder. George Carlin said it best, create reality, what a concept. Just think of this. Where did this all come from? This is amazing. We're living in a video game, you know that. Literally, to me, and they've shown this is fairly new, reality is digital. When you get down to the quantum level, eventually they've been able to show there's a point where a quantum bit moves from point A to point B without ever going in the middle. That's digital, folks. We're living in a digital creation. Where is this digital creation running? You've seen the Matrix with the copperhead batteries. People are the batteries. Okay, that's kind of silly, but the Matrix concept, living in a simulation. We're living in God's mind. He's sustaining us. He's the mainframe we're running on. This is a digital universe. It's his creation. He is intimately involved. He not only knows the hairs on your head, he knows the names of every atom in that hair. He knows the names of every qubit in that hair. It's awesome. He made the laws of nature so we could be here. I'm in awe. God is awesome.
Scott, in part of his testimony, was in his own little world for a while because his self-esteem was very low because he was a washout. He didn't believe he had anything to contribute. So he didn't even know for all these years that this Christian realm existed, that there were other people that were doing things influential. He was in his own little world, doing his own little thing, with his own little family in a little part of the world here. And so what happens is now God is saying, no, you've got to come out. You need to share your story. You need to get involved with people. You need to share and see. And God has brought him through a pilgrimage, and that's part of his story. From that was then, and this is now. And God is saying now is just like Moses, Abraham, they were all older. When God said, okay, now it's time to get out of the wilderness, now it's time to get out, let's go here. You may not know what the next step is, but God is saying now, Scott, you're needed, your brain is needed, your story's needed, and let's start traveling and getting and seeing how God is going to work the next step. And so he's not as good sometimes with sharing that part of it, but that's why God put me here to help him and be his backup.
Just a side answer to your question. Yes, I did know. Some of them I met after the fact. Robert Williams, King's Quest and all that, he actually started as a salesman for Adventure International before he started his company. And Roberta says, hey, I think I could write a game. Can we do something? Which is interesting. There is a tremendous untapped market for the kingdom out there that we need to reach. And if we're not directing each game with the thought of how am I growing the kingdom, how am I increasing God's glory, we're not going to do it right. Part of my problem with the inheritance was I lost sight of that along the way. I got the idea I'm making a Christian game, but I still got the idea I'm Scott Adams and I'm going to do like I always did and have this big deal. Wrong. Ding. So it's okay.